You're listening to TechRecruit, a podcast that educates talent acquisition and recruitment professionals on innovation to attract talent across all industries. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to the TechRecruit Podcast. My name is Stacey Broadwell. Today we have Nihal Solomon. He is the manager of technical recruiting for Rubicon Project. Welcome, Nihal.
Hi, Stacey. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. It's a beautiful day here in Los Angeles, which generally it always is.
Yeah, I mean, it's, getting by June gloom. I think we should be good.
Yeah. Just waiting for the July to kick in and all the, are you doing anything for vacation?
Yes, actually, my wife and I are going to Bali for 8 days. Yes. One of the perks of working at Rubicon Project is we actually do a summer shutdown where it's paid time off. We actually tell people, hey, you need to take time off, enjoy, relax. We shut down our laptops, and so the trip kind of coincided with that. So yeah, I'm excited.
So you're working at Rubicon. Tell me about Rubicon, because quite honestly, I feel like Rubicon Project's been one of those companies that always has positions out there. So if you're a recruiter, you always see their advertisements. They're always doing something new. And if I'm not mistaken, I feel like a few years ago, didn't you guys move into a new building, a bigger building?
We did. So, interestingly enough, I mean, Rubicon Project is a tech company in the advertisement space. And, most of us don't really think about ad technology. As consumers, we see an ad, we're like, oh, this ad sucks, or you're kind of glazing over it. But what I didn't realize is, from an engineering perspective, there's a lot that goes into ad technology. Because if you look at it on a global scale, if I'm on the New York Times here in LA and someone in Chicago is on the New York Times, we see different ads, and it could be a different type of format as well. And so really coming to Rubicon Project really helped me understand how that world works. It sort of gives me a greater appreciation now whenever I see an ad, and as a company, since we were founded in 2007, I've been always trying to make the experience of buying and selling advertisement very positive, but also for consumers, they're getting the right type of ads as well. And as a company, Rubicon Project is interesting because ad technology runs in the background. We're not a social platform. We're not, in the entertainment side. I mean, we're literally running in the background. So for a lot of people, they don't really know us. However, I think for engineers and folks that work in the ad industry, they definitely know about us because of, from the engineering perspective, the complexities that we have on our platform. So yeah, definitely a very different space to be in, for sure.
I find the ad tech space so interesting, and certainly I've worked with some companies that were in that space that were trying to optimize where their ads go or understand where their audience is coming from. So do you work with companies and helping them optimize their ads? Is that what Rubicon does?
Well, just to keep it simple, so we're an ad exchange. So think of it as like the New York Stock Exchange for buyers and sellers of ads. So we're not like specifically focused on the buy side or the sell side. We don't create our own ads, for products. We really rely on, publishers and ad agencies to really come with that. And then we make sure that the right transactions take place. Now, along the way, we have certain guidelines and areas that we look for in terms of our expectations. So we're not getting any single publisher, or any agency on our platform. We look to see sort of what data they have. We look at many different factors before they actually come on our platform. So we're kind of like sort of a premier exchange. We're also what we call an independent exchange. Our competitors would be Google and Facebook. And what they do is they definitely want to get the traffic and advertisements onto, of course, their properties. Whereas for us, we're independent. Like, we're not trying to get someone to go to one specific site.
That's so interesting. I had a conversation literally just yesterday on job ads and how you can advertise those job ads to potential clients or candidates, and how you might do that in the different channels. And one of the things that was brought up was geolocating candidates and being able to push those ads to them. Does Rubicon do something like that?
No. So, so what that would be is, for example, if we had, for example, I'll give you an example here, Waze, right? So Waze is an app that a lot of people use.
Yep.
You're driving down the road and you come to the stop sign, and there's a pause or maybe a stoplight. It gives a chance for an ad, maybe it's a 15-second ad to pop up, right?
Yeah.
And the other day it was National Donut Day, and there happened to be a Dunkin' Donuts like a couple of miles away. And it was like, hey, celebrate National Donut Day. Here's a Dunkin' Donuts 1.6 miles away. And I was like, that's interesting. How do they do that, right? And so, that piece of ad might have not come through our exchange, because for us, we might say, okay, is that the type of inventory we want to work with? And it could be, but there could be other exchanges that might process that transaction. So we're out there and we kind of select certain publishers and agencies that we really only want to work with. But as an example, sure, that could come through an exchange as well.
I just find it very interesting how companies are really trying to push the needle on how they get your attention. And, for companies that are in Nebraska, where, you could just put a advertising like table tent on a table, or in a gas station, that might get your attention. But in Los Angeles, there's advertisements all over the place, and there's a lot of traffic. So it's funny that you're talking about like driving and getting an ad pushed to you about the donuts and stuff when you pull up to a stop sign. So really cool. So that's what you're doing at Rubicon. You are, as a manager, tell us about your team.
So I have a small team, myself and another technical recruiter. She joined us the end of April. And
Wendy.
Yes, Wendy Landaverde. She's awesome. And up till we brought someone on board full time, I was managing contract recruiters, contract sourcers, and it was just an interesting place to be, and where it's really all about executing on a short-term project. A lot of what we're doing is very sort of reactive recruiting, but for 2019, we knew that there were going to be a number of brand new headcounts that was crucial to the growth of the company on certain products that we were working on. So it gave us a chance to really kind of put together a plan to go out and find the right person to join the team. But in addition to that, it didn't mean like, well, I wasn't sitting around not doing anything. I had my own rec load as well, which then led us to what caught my attention was like, how could we use technologies and tools to kind of help a really lean team still be able to find the right talent, right? And so those were some of the areas we kind of looked at and figured out, like, all right, for 2019, what do we want to do to, one, find the right talent, hire quickly and be able to scale, but also the fact that, our engineering teams are scattered throughout multiple different offices. So we have Seattle, San Francisco, Bozeman, Montana. Yes, people always ask, you guys have an engineering team in Bozeman? I said, we got some great engineers in Bozeman, Montana. We also have engineers in Boston and New York. And our newest office that we're opening up is New Jersey. And also we have engineers in London, right? So if you look at it, it's like, all right, well, that's a pretty large and scattered engineering team. Typically a lot of companies in LA might, just be in LA and maybe San Francisco. So it's sort of an easier market to kind of go after candidates. But when you're that spread and that wide, you got to have different tools and technologies that have to work for you, especially if you're the only recruiter or if you got one more person starting, right? And so we have to be very selective about what areas we wanted to get into. One of the things that I looked at is that at Rubicon Project, for many years, I think there was a reputation in the sense of being an ad tech, earlier on, like we were a great company to join. And then a lot of other competitors came through. And then when there was the ups and downs of the ad tech world. And so now it's like, all right, well, we need to get the word out there about us. So we looked at, why don't we get into social recruiting, right? Some companies are large enough that they have individuals that help run social recruiting. So whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Snapchat, whether it's even your company's LinkedIn page. I mean, there's a social aspect to it where I would say current generation engineers are spending more of their time. They're very passive, but we didn't have like a person dedicated to do that. And because we were lean, we just don't have the time and the bandwidth to do that. So we looked at, what tools out there can we use? And I heard about CareerArc at that time, and they're located here in LA. And so we did a demo with them, and it was like this light bulb went off. I'm like, oh my God, like this automates so much of what we'd want to do. And so we looked at that and said, and cost wise, I mean, it was definitely within our budget. And, we just said, gosh, even if we got one hire in a year, it totally met, the requirements that we had. But also it would just get the word out about us, in different social channels. And so what we had to
creating
do,
like an engagement and putting your brand out there, getting it in front of the right people. That's what CareerArc did for you?
Yeah, so basically we could create our own campaigns. It would automatically run it. It would create its own hashtags. It could use your own content that it automatically uploads. And it has reports. So you kind of see like how your campaigns are doing. You can make changes as well. I think the core thing is you kind of really need to really get together with your marketing team, right? And because marketing teams at Rubicon Project are really all about the B2B side of our business, whereas for social recruiting, we're all about going and finding individuals that be excited about working for Rubicon Project. So we implemented CareerArc and had to integrate that with our social channels. So we actually had to create our own Rubicon Project jobs Twitter handle, which was kind of fun to do. And so
why did you have to, I mean, obviously, but was there a discussion between like, should we put these on Rubicon Project's main one, or should we have a jobs one? What was how did that conversation go? I'm just curious.
So for the company, Rubicon Project, it is, I would say, from the social aspect, really focused on working with our clients, such as like, Spotify is one of our huge clients. So it's more about, the branding of the company and from a B2B perspective, what our platform and technology could do. Also talked about how we're engaged in the ad tech world from like summits and products and so forth. So from that social aspect, I think our Rubicon Project Twitter handle was more for, the audience was much different, right? We're not going to have candidates really out there. And so what was suggested is that we create a Join Rubicon Twitter handle. And so it's fun. Like when you're creating a brand new Twitter handle that it's going to go out, globally, you're a little bit more mindful of like, okay, what you're going to put out there, right? So, but it did make us sort of work together with our marketing team to really come up with a way that the marketing team can get something out of this as well as recruiting, right? So we wanted to make sure that there was still quality branding that was going on, but also it was interesting because then marketing would be able to also maybe talk about some of our team events that happen in the offices, and kind of link that up with our Twitter handle, which then would go into our Facebook page and LinkedIn page as well. So that was kind of great to kind of get that social recruiting aspect off and running. And along with that, we looked at and said, all right, well, as a company, we really do well in drawing talent to our site. When I talk to my fellow recruiters in the world, I talk about how we have actually a large number of hires of people that come to our own site, which is interesting because I think a lot of companies, you spend a lot of time sourcing or finding different avenues because a lot of the folks that apply probably aren't the quality of what you're looking for. But what we realize is that you got to write a great ad, especially if you're an ad tech company because, like I said, from a branding perspective, you're not the Snapchats, you're not the Airbnbs, you don't have the name brand. So we figured is like anyone that applies has actually probably done some research into what we do, and they kind of read the job descriptions and realize that, okay, it's an ad company, but as an engineer, awesome, I'm going to do Java 8 asynchronous programming and use the latest reactive programming. That's pretty cool. I didn't really know much about that would be used in advertisement industry. And so here we are. And so suddenly we're getting an influx of engineers that might not have applied, but they like what they see in terms of the job description, but also what we're doing. So what we looked at and said, all right, well, if we can integrate career arc that gets the word out there, what other tools can we use? And so we looked at an AI tool called Fetcher. And they're a growing company. And what we kind of liked about them was that you could actually specify what roles that you wanted to use their platform for in your sourcing. So for example, if I knew like the top 3 roles were A, B, and C, I could say as a team, hey guys, let's focus on these roles. And the actual tool itself, you'd work with the Fetcher team. They actually do all the work of creating the Boolean, like finding the right type of companies to go after, and they present it to you and say, here's what we have. Does this look great? Here's some sample folks. You're like, perfect. And then what it'll do, it'll automatically go out and get like passive candidates to you, and then you get to rank them as well, and then their AI sort of goes out and keeps finding those type of folks. And so it was like great because like you didn't have to spend tons of time sourcing because of the bandwidth that we had in a small team. But we were still able to get more responses from passive candidates. Even if they weren't interested, they responded. And I think because the tool automated the follow-ups, it just made it a lot easier as well.
Totally.
So basically, I think what we looked into, let's combine social recruiting using this tool and getting a new tech recruiter on board. And that's why I feel like we're going to be really able to meet our hiring objectives for this year, but also I think position ourselves for 2020 as well.
It's interesting. I mean, you've really kind of summarized 3 ideas in a nutshell, because it starts with that workforce planning, right? We are going to grow this amount, or we're getting these new, whatever the catalyst might be for your hiring. We don't want to, and it's going to be, it's going to be something that's substantial enough that it can constitute bringing on full-time recruiters to manage that process. So you moved away from having the contractors, or do you still have contractors?
No, we don't have any contractors at the moment. And a lot of for the contracting side, it was really a lot of reactive recruiting. So because we're able to get away from that, like you said, workforce planning, we kind of know what's happening Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, right? And so we're not like suddenly engineering isn't like, here's 35 recs, go fill them all. It's like, all right, let's do this the right way, right? And because we're also building out some brand new products, there's a certain process that we take into consideration as well.
So you have the workforce plan, you've got the hires, you've hired Wendy, and it's funny, one of my favorite punk rock songs is Wendy. Anyway, you have the workforce plan, you have your new full-time hires, and then now you realize that the technology that you have, that you could do better, especially with the new technologies that are out there. And this is something that, this was the whole reason I launched the conference, because I myself wanted to know what the greatest and latest technologies are out there. You hear about the AI, you hear about the automation, and I myself know that I could automate processes alone. I know there's got to be technology out there that could do it better. And so hearing from companies like Rubicon and what you guys did and what your experience was is so awesome and valuable. I thank you for sharing that. So you got the social, you understood, like you got the social, feelers out there, and you get the engagement, but also how do we automate that? Because we don't have the time to do that. It's another job.
It
right?
is. It is.
And so how helpful has that been? So how long have you had that implemented, that system?
So social recruiting, we've had it implemented since December,
Mhm.
and Fetcher around the early part of the year, yeah, around January. Because what we didn't want to do is just go crazy and get it, whenever we saw it. We just had to make sure we had enough, hands on it, to be able to not only just demo it, but make sure it works right. And I'll tell you, like, we've seen an influx of new candidates. And in fact, it's interesting because on the social recruiting side, what it does is, it'll take all the jobs that you have and it'll start tweeting it out, even locally. So, we actually we have an office in Tokyo. I remember once we had some jobs posted for Tokyo, and next, you see like where it's being like kind of focused within Tokyo, and you kind of see some candidates coming out of the woodwork, right? We also have an office in Milan, in Italy. We had some roles there from not engineering, but more on the RevOps side. So that's a cool thing about, I think, like for social recruiting career arc. It's not just for tech, roles. I mean, it's literally for any role in the company. So it's not only helping, all the engineering roles, but it helps my colleague, Andrea Polonis, who covers everything on the corporate side, including RevOps, which is also important for us. So, we wanted to make sure that, the tools that we use isn't just helping one segment of talent acquisition, that it's going to help the whole team.
Yeah, across the board.
Yeah.
So were there any technologies that you were using at the time that you said, oh, we got to get rid of this?
Last year, what we did is, a couple of years ago, we did have some technologies, and I think not that they were bad. I think it was just we weren't ready for it, And one of the things I looked at is, like, I get bombarded, every week, 2 or 3 emails about something cool new you can plug into this and that, and there's a lot. I mean, and sometimes what companies will do is they'll say, hey, let's have 3 or 4 tools and technologies, and next thing you know, that's all you're focused on, and you forget the actual art of recruiting. I mean, at the end of the day, technology can only do so much because you have to connect with the candidate, take them through that process. But more importantly, if you're just spending all your time on just tools and technologies, you're going to miss out on the other important aspect of recruiting, right? And so I think what we had before, we had a little too much to work with and not enough focus. And then now what we decided, so last year, is we just said, let's just get back to the basics and use our great referral program. Let's use, our LinkedIn search, a pure recruiting, Boolean searches. And then let's figure out, like, as we plan for 2019, what's the right tool to use, 1 or 2. And so I think we've definitely, processed it the right way. And we're seeing positive effects about that. But yeah, that's one thing. It's like, I think sometimes companies, we just like, oh, let's just try every single thing out there. Yeah, but does it make sense for the needs of your team, right?
Mm-hmm. And that can be expensive as well. Who has time to put all their data into something and then have to extract it out and put it in something else and then learn how to use that technology? That's time and money that I certainly don't have. Which is why I wanted to have all these, companies on to talk about what they've been using, because they have more time and money than I do.
Well, it's also important that you have to have leadership buy into some of this, right? I mean, they're the ones that are signing off on the contracts for some of the tools and technologies used, and it's important to demo and vet them out before you present it to the leaders and showcase what's the benefit of using that. I think sometimes you kind of gloss it over and say, hey, this is, company A who's, Google's using this thing, so we should use it. Well, might not make sense for us, even though Google uses it, right?
That's a great question. How do you sell that technology and buying that technology or the ROI to stakeholders, to the executive board?
Well, what we have to do is say, okay, look, where did our spend go in terms of hiring, right? How much agency fees did we pay? How much did we pay in contract recruiters? How much did we pay in hiring individuals that maybe we didn't have to hire? So when you take all those numbers and say, okay, well, this particular tool or technology can save us X amount, but deliver equal or better in terms of the quality of hires, that's one aspect. And also we know that the longer a role is open, there's more work that the team is doing, right? So if these tools and technologies can also showcase the fact that the time to hire is less with a great quality candidate, that helps. The team gets excited about not having roles open for 6 to 8 months. And then that if a role's open that long, teams are interviewing constantly, they're not actually doing what they're supposed to be doing as engineers, it really delays, going live with important products. So at the end of the day, it does affect the company long term.
It's interesting too, because you've seen this surge of these AI companies that claim that they could do all this for your sourcing needs and for your hiring needs, and a lot of them are startups. And there was this time where it was like this just like these desktop-based ATSs, right? That you would use like 10 years ago. And then it became like the cloud-based or the cloud-based ATS. And now it's like what ATS or sourcing tools are going to be on your phone, which of them are going to be mobile enabled. And then during each of those shifts, you see these larger companies buy these smaller companies, or they go out of business. So it's almost a risk at the same point, where a lot of these companies are startups, but investing so much of your data into them. So I'm curious, when you were looking at these newer companies, like Fetcher's only a few years old, how did you hear about them? Was it referred by somebody?
My manager had heard about them. She's on a lot of HR organizations, and through word of mouth, she said, "Hey, Nihal, check this out. If you think it's cool, let's try it out." I mean, she's great. She's just like, check it out. It's, not my expertise. Just let me know. And so I tested it out, and I was like, wow, this is doing some really cool work that I don't have to spend a lot of time doing. That's where that started. Because there, so you got to show them.
Yeah.
You got to show that. Look, it's still bringing the end result, which is we're having a quality hire, but here's some additional quality. Here's some additional benefits that we can get out of it, right? So I think you got to just kind of talk about that. But like I said, at the end of the day, you got to have a really good relationship with your manager and leadership for them to understand why we want to use these technologies.
Okay. So I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and you have a really interesting background. You have a lot of experience, and you and I actually came from the same Fortune 500 staffing agency. Yes. I always like to just say it that way. I don't like to say the name. I just say the Fortune 500 staffing agency. But and really, however, the best training I feel hands down that I received, although things have certainly shifted to like the automation that we've just been talking about in social media. But tell me, how did you get into recruiting? Did I see you were a developer previously, or?
Yeah, well, even previous to that. So when I first started going to school, I actually had no idea what I wanted to be. I always just loved being around people. I like to help people. So I was like, oh, maybe I should be a psychologist. So I actually started studying psychology and thought I'd go into the social work side. And then I realized, man, to really be successful, you got to do like a PhD, you got to do a lot of research. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't see myself like being in school for that long. So then I looked at the fact that I always used to dabble with computers, but I never was interested in computers in high school because I thought the nerds aren't just cool people. And, if I was a nerd back then, I stayed a nerd, I probably would be in a different situation. But, I just always loved computers. And around 96, 97, really the web was just starting to take start moving and growing. And I was like, oh, what is this World Wide Web? Oh, okay. So I kind of decided maybe I should, go get into computers, right? And so I went to school to go and study information systems. And so during that time is where I got more of the business side and also just from the programming side. And then I also was working at a small little software company in Michigan. And I really just enjoyed technology at that time. But I was not a really good coder. Like, I was okay. I wasn't really the best. But my manager was like, hey, but you really are great at talking to people. Maybe we can have you manage some projects, maybe, be a product manager. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. But around 2000, 2001 at the dot-com, the burst of the dot-com era there, our company sort of went under. It was a small company. And so at that time, I'm like, well, I know that I don't want to be a developer. And someone said, hey, you should be a tech recruiter. I'm like, okay, technology, you know how to talk to people. You just got to go out and find the right candidates and make sure it's a fit. I'm like, okay, by principle, that seems pretty simple. And then that's where it all started in 2003, joined the famous Fortune 500 company, where I'll be honest, like, it was great training. I mean, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I'm at,
You were there for 8 years?
I was there for almost 6, actually.
Oh, okay.
6, but agency-wise, I've been in
still a long time to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you last more than 2 years there, if you last more than, I think, a month, I think the saying was, if you last more than a month, they like you. If you last more than 3 months, then you like them, or something like that. There was some sort of high turnover rate. So that's amazing.
I was there for 6 years. Woo. I guess they really loved me. No, it was great.
Totally.
Look, it was you're learning about recruiting, right? I started doing the contract recruiting side. Eventually, I got exposed to the full desk, and I was like, oh, this is great. I have relationships with clients and candidates, like, put two to two together. Really enjoyed that whole side of recruiting. And then I was ready to sort of make some changes and come out to California. And so came out to California and then really kind of extended my agency experience and to really focus on full desk recruiting, because I wanted to really get that under my belt and really understand how that works. And then around 6 years ago, around this time, I was like, I've done a lot of work on the agency side. It's been great, but I had some friends who had left and joined some well-known companies internally. They kind of talked about their experience in seeing folks that they hire sort of grow their career. And so it was just a different engagement. And I told myself, that sounds pretty interesting. Like, it'd be really cool to like actually work for a company and understand how they hire, but also bring about, principles of agency hiring internally, because I could probably help move things along quicker. As back in the agency days, it's you work closest to the dollar and you want to close recs quickly. It's like, okay, well, if you can kind of bring that sort of sense of urgency internally, I'm like, oh, I could probably help a lot of companies. So went out and took sort of this leap of faith, left a full-time role and started contracting with a company called Auction.com. They were based in Irvine, but I was actually working remotely and helping out their San Francisco engineering team. It was my first sort of foray into internal recruiting. And I loved it. I was like, this is great. Like, I can talk to managers and they're not shutting the door because I'm an agency recruiter. Like, they want to work with you. And so that began my journey of sort of being in the internal side of recruiting and different, contracts, and just growing and absorbing and learning is where I ended up at Rubicon Project 3 years ago, about this time actually. And since then I've learned a lot to where, being able to not only just handle a great workload and really help an organization grow, but also really consult with my hiring managers, right? And sort of being able to bring a great experience for them and also for candidates. And so it's been a crazy career. And I think about it, like 16 years ago is when I got into recruiting, and I love it. and looking forward to just where this is going to go, you know?
It's really it's an interesting time too, to be able to, what I like that you've been able, when you're in a position where you are in a growth or you're in a change, where you can bring in the new systems like you've done and implement those and test them out, that's exciting. And that's a really cool time to join a company when you have the capability to do that.
And also I think, because I've been at different places, you kind of can learn like, all right, hey, at this one company, I've noticed this worked, right? That'd be great to take that concept and implement it somewhere else. And so a lot of what I do here has been from experiences I've had at different places, and you kind of figure out like what works. And so I'm happy that I went through that experience, because 6 years ago, I had no idea how internal recruiting works. And then if you look at it in 2003, I had no idea how recruiting itself works. So I think it's important to always be open to learning wherever you're at, and then being able to adapt, but also take what you've learned and be able to implement it to wherever you go in your career.
You're going to be speaking you're talking about learning, and you're going to be speaking at LAX Tech Recruit in July at my conference. And I've asked you to do a presentation on kind of how you implemented these systems at Rubicon Project. But I was going to, have you spoken at other events before or done anything of that where you've actually shared what you've done before with recruiters?
Not like officially. I mean, I have like a group of recruiters that we always get together, and we're like sharing ideas all the time. But I'm really excited about this because I think, a lot of the conferences I've been to, I mean, they've been so huge, right? If you go to LinkedIn's Talent Connect, I mean, good luck trying to, get on stage there, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really great conferences. And I think it's just more about, I didn't feel like I had enough information that was worthwhile to share. Sometimes I feel like some speakers get up, they just like to talk, and you're like, okay, I don't know if I got much out of it. So I never wanted to be out there just to present. So I always felt like when the time was right? And I think you and I just getting to know each other for last year, and then kind of talking recently, I think it was like, you know what, this is probably the right time, because I feel like I have something of value I can share to the rest of the community. And that's why I decided like this would be a great time to get that part of my career going.
That is the whole, like in recruiting, it's all about timing, right?
It is.
And everything with recruiting, I always feel like it's all about, I mean, you can have the engagement, you can have the outreach, but I just always feel like, but with those systems that you use, it's about you also being there with your brand at the right time when that time for the candidate comes. But yes, I host LinkedIn Local Los Angeles, and you were at our recruiter social, and we were just talking about I think we all went in the back, and there was like 30 recruiters, and we all got in a big circle, and I mean, we could have just held hands and sung Kumbaya, but we went around the circle and we talked about some of the challenges that we've had, and you shared some of your ideas on how you've addressed some of your guys' challenges. And that's when I said, would you want to share this at our conference? And so, yeah, it was just like the timing worked out perfectly. So tell us what you're going to be speaking about at LAX Tech Recruit.
So what I want to talk about is the fact that, as internal recruiters, we have to use different resources when it comes to really finding the right candidates, and technology and using tools and making it easier to help recruit is what sort of turned me on to like the fact that we should talk about technology and how to use it and not be afraid of it, but also talk about that it can be technology overload and to make sure it's the right type of technology. So what I'm going to talk about is, a way for a team to look internally and say, okay, as a team, what are our goals for hiring, right? And if it's X, Y, and Z, how are we going to meet those goals? Are we going to rely on agencies? Are we going to rely just on our referral program? What are the resources that we're going to look at of where we're getting the candidates? technology should be one of them. And if it is, how do you go about choosing that technology? How do you go about figuring out like if it's the right technology as well? So I will cover different areas such as, the size of the team. That's also important because, if you have a very large team that's using 3 or 4 technologies, there's a lot of data you have to work with. You're going to spend a lot of time just looking at data and analytics, but you got to be able to execute very quickly. So you got to make sure that, okay, is the tool that you're using the right tool? If you are a lean team, like the one that we were in, okay, well, how can you evaluate what's the right tool to use? And then also, I think, talk about like trying to find the data and also show the benefits of how it's happened, right? So a lot of reporting. So one of the key things is like, is the tool that you're using have great reporting capabilities? Because if you're spending some money on it, you got to show the ROI on it as well, right? So kind of talk about just a way to look at different technologies, look at your team, and decide which ones could be the right ones. I'm not here to like advertise for the ones that I'm using because, the ones that I use right now just make sense for the environment that we're in.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good talk. We're really looking forward to having you speak at LAX Tech Recruit. You're going to be on stage with a lot of great presenters. I believe Hallmark Labs is going to be moderating the panel. We have Google, Lockheed Martin, Chow Now, and Candace Taylor is actually in your building. Is that right?
It is. They're on the 2nd floor, and I know Candace well. So yeah, I'm very excited.
It's going to be a really good Los Angeles group of talent acquisition professionals and recruiters who are going to be sharing what they do to make their job more efficient and the technologies that they use. So it'll be a really fun day. I want to ask you one last question as we close here. Has there been people in your journey who helped you, mentors or anybody who's kind of helped you or opened doors for you along the way?
Yes, there are. I mean, it just goes back to like just recruiting itself. Like, even if an opportunity doesn't work out for you, you always leave the door open. Anyone that you come in contact with, maybe there's nothing there at this time, but if you've got a good connection with someone, it's always good to like keep that bond going and just the open communication, and be just flexible, right? You can't be like, this is my one thing I want to do, etc. But yeah, I would say there are a handful of people that I have met along my career who've helped shape my career, but also given me opportunities to grow as well.
I asked because I feel like there has, at least for me, I feel like when I first started in recruitment, there was a lot of closed doors, siloed. No one wanted to share their process. I literally remember when I first got on LinkedIn a decade ago, and other recruiters saying, I don't link in with other recruiters, and they don't like network with them. And it was very kind of like, and I feel like that has either changed or I'm older. I don't know which it is, but do you feel that's changed, that people are more open now?
For sure. And I think it's conferences like these and just other conferences I've been to. I think you start realizing that, okay, sure, we might be competing for the same type of talent, but it's like, if I don't hire that person, it's not like I'm losing out on my commission fee, right? So it's a whole different mindset. So it's like, you know what, like, and I talk to my friends, I go, look, we interviewed this person and we passed because of this, but man, like, if we had a different type of role, we'd love to hire this person. I should check them out, right? And so we start sharing information. It's like we get together and say, we have this one team and they want to have like a 5-step interview process. How do I do this? How do I handle that, right? And so you start looking at the fact that you become partners in this world that we're in. But it's definitely shifted over the last 4 or 5 years for sure. And I'm excited to, meet more folks, at these conferences, because trust me, I learn a lot from them, and hopefully they can learn from me as well. And I think it just goes both ways.
I feel like with all the speakers that we have at the conference, they're all in that same mindset of wanting to share and wanting to network and wanting to meet one another. So when everybody comes with that mindset, it creates an awesome vibe. I feel like there's always been this really good vibe at these events where people are just it's just a good, I can't explain it, it's just a really good vibe.
Well, also I think, I feel like LA is sort of the last place where it really kind of started gelling,
Yeah, maybe.
The LA tech community, I don't think was really taken seriously nationwide. It was like, it's LA, but we've been a really huge force now, and I think it's a great advantage because like you go to San Francisco, you go to New York, and it can be a little bit overwhelming in terms of the vastness that's there. And LA, even though it's technically geographically one of the largest cities,
yeah,
it's a pretty tight-knit community, and like you just see that, so-and-so was at this company, went to another company as a recruiter. Oh, but hey, you know what? I know 20 of his friends, right? And so you start noticing that it's really a lot tight-knit, more of a tight-knit community here than I feel anywhere else in terms of a large metropolitan area.
So, if people want to get hold of you, how can they find you, Nihal?
How can they find me? The easiest is my LinkedIn profile. I like share all my information there. I just keep it simple and use my LinkedIn profile. And it's funny because like I thought about it the other day. I'm like, I don't think I had changed my profile information a long time. So in fact, I think probably about 3 weeks ago is when I changed my picture, added some information, because you kind of forget that is sort of a living, active profile that's out there. And so it's important to kind of say, hey, since that's where a lot of eyes are, that's the place most people check you out. It's best to like keep most updated information.
What did you do to update? Because I've gone through this before. Like, my skills, and then I added different skills and took some away, and I was like, wait, I should have left that because I had all these endorsements. What did you update?
Basically I updated some key projects initiatives that we were working on. For example, like one of the things we've done this year is actually host a lot of events, like hiring events.
At Rubicon?
No. So just to back up a bit. So, for example, we have an office in Bozeman, and we wanted to hire some people in Bozeman. We're like, okay, well, it's a small tech community. How do we find the right talent? Reached out to someone that ran a local meetup, said, hey, we have an office there. We want to host a meetup at a brewery. Great. 30 people showed up. We're like, holy cow. We hired, I think, 4 people out of that event. And
that's awesome.
Super cost effective, right? And so what we said, okay, if we're getting into a new market, why don't we just throw it out there, right? And so I knew that as we're advertising these, people would look at my LinkedIn profile. And so then on that profile, I would list that event, or I would list like, hey, come to New Jersey, here are the roles we're looking to hire, right? And just make it very much about that versus your profile, your current profile, more of like a resume. It's really all about like, hey, here's why you should check us out. Here's what I'm working on that might be exciting for you. Come check us out, right? And so I changed it more at that angle versus like, oh, here are all my skill sets, and this is what I do, and this is the technologies I cover. So yeah.
It was more for who you're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's what I had done. And then I saw this article where you got to make it more like about yours. And I was just like, well, I would rather have, a Java or a Python engineer coming to look at my profile. I love what you said about the hosting events, because I do the CTO roundtable events, right? And I've been doing those for 10 years. And I always thought, why aren't companies doing these to recruit talent? Because we've always done this, and we've helped some companies in doing it, hosting at their headquarters. And I'm so surprised that more companies aren't doing that. But what we do with ours is it's a little different with the CTO roundtable. It's 5 brands. It's like 5 different brands.
Yeah.
And the audience is software engineers. And so we've had some companies say where they don't want 5 brands, they don't want 4 other competitions looking for the same talent
Sure.
at their headquarters. They want it to be all about them. But I feel like if you have this kind of diverse panel, that it will bring more, at least that's what's been successful for us.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys run your events? Do you do it through a meetup? You like find a meetup to host it?
Yeah. Well, my angle is this. So for example, New Jersey, right? So New Jersey, we knew we were looking to hire 4 different or fill 4 different roles. So as we posted our jobs, as we started getting interest in candidates applying, I looked at it and said, okay, you know what? Through my sourcing, our team's referrals, and just folks that are interested, said, there's a pool of about 25 people. Why don't we just invite them to an event? They can be themselves, they can chat about what they do, and you walk away from the event saying, hey, wow, we met 25 people. Of these 25, here's some 10 that really stood out, right?
Yeah.
And so those 10, you follow up and say, hey, you know what? It was really great meeting you. We're really interested in what you can do. Why don't you come out to our office tomorrow, hang out with us, talk a little bit more about your background. And so we kind of really break down the walls of like going through a lot of formality, because what we realize is if you can be yourself and it's not like this, oh my God, I got to sit here and whiteboard, then you kind of really get a sense of what a person's like, right? Now, from there, if you wanted to take someone through sort of more of a formal process, you can. But, we've been able to hire people a lot faster that way. And I'll be honest with you, it was not that expensive, right? And you just got to say, hey, local meetup group, we're going to be out there. You've got some great engineers. If you want to promote it, you can. So it's a little bit different. So I think for us, we're not like opening it up to like, we're not opening it up to where we have all these companies come in specifically for a set of candidates that we want to get excited about Rubicon Project. So.
What about career fairs? Have you guys have you done any investment in career fairs or?
No, I mean, the ones that, so we did one in LA a few years ago. Mm-hmm. The only situation was, I think, 85 to 90% of the applicants were new grads or they're about to finish school, which totally understand. I've been there before.
Interesting, yeah.
But I think as a company for us, we're like, we only have, 30 roles to fill. Of these 30, 0 are associate or entry level. We go to this event, we're going to get a lot of individuals that are looking to start their career, which is completely understandable. For us, it didn't make sense on some of the larger career fairs. Mm-hmm. We did a career fair in Bozeman, which was successful because we only had a few roles in Bozeman and we were open to associate engineers. And so we partnered up with Montana State University at their career fair and had a chance to present our platform as well. And that works out. So I think sometimes you got to look and say, I think it's easy to like attend every fair, every event. And after a while, you just have an influx of candidates you have to follow up with. I think you just got to be a little bit more strategic about what makes sense for what you have open and what you're trying to hire for. So to answer questions, I don't do a lot of career fairs.
I asked because LMU had this Silicon Beach Expo. And the guy who was developing it disappeared. I don't know what happened. And they asked for me to take it over.
Okay.
This year in November. And so what they wanted it to be is like one of those college career fairs / my conference. So it would be, it would be like my event with presentations and panels.
Okay.
Probably more so like software engineers or probably not entirely recruiters, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But, and then career tables, right?
Okay.
So over like a 2 to 3 day event. And so I was looking at, and so I was just curious because, how would I price that out, and what would the value be for, and I know what they charge for career fairs, but I'm curious, I was curious, like if you do events, and I love that you do, because I feel like so many companies, it's such an easy win to have an event and do a barbecue or what have you. But then I was wondering if it was worth it to take that over for them. Just something I'm considering.
It could. Well, you can also kind of put sort of your angle at it as well. I mean, you look at it this way, I think it's really kind of like you're trying to brand something, right? And so like, I think if it's like, if you're going to career fair, you know, are you trying to like get your brand out there? Like what's your end objective and some of the folks you're trying to get? Like, is it specific for a certain type of roles, or are you just like hiring in general for the company as a whole, right? And so I think you can definitely,
You'd be more like, I guess, but from what you're saying is, yeah, I would hope companies would want to host a table because they're hiring. But then the thought is, if it is at a university, that perhaps maybe it's more seniors. However, last year there was that tech job fair that was not at a university. It was just kind of like for everybody, technology job fair.
Yeah, the one downtown LA.
Jason Nazar's.
Yep.
And I'd be curious, kind of what the catalyst for some of his sponsors were, the companies were for coming in. Did you guys have a table?
We didn't go this year. We went a couple of years ago, and I think it was it might have been maybe the first year that they'd done it. And it was like from super startups to SpaceX and Tesla. It was like, wow, okay, and you knew where the lines were: Tesla, SpaceX, Snapchat. Like, it was kind of like, all right, well, the brands are definitely getting it, So you, and so you'd have people come in like, Rubicon Project, what's that? And 90% of the time you're trying to explain what you do. So I think like there's a place for that. I think for us, I think we just wanted to try it and just kind of jumped into it.
Was it mostly new grads, or?
It was a lot of new grads.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, I think tech fairs should try to like segment the market to the companies that are coming, like for example, if you're going to have a lot of new grads coming over, it'd be like the companies that you want there say, hey, Rubicon Project, look, we have about, 2,000 new grads coming up. Like, do you guys have entry-level roles to fill? Oh yeah, you do. Do you have an internship program? Yes, you do. Great. This could be an opportunity for you, right? Like, if you don't have any of that and they tell you that the number of folks are coming are more junior level, then you're almost kind of like just time is gone, right? Unless you're just trying to get the brand out there and just put it out there.
Yeah.
I think like it's important for the organization that's hosting this type of career fair to get the right companies, and then also for companies to make sure that whatever career fair they're getting involved in, there's a certain reason why that career fair makes sense for them.
Have you guys done anything with Built-in?
We haven't yet. I think it's an organization I think we're always sort of evaluating. I mean, like, like I said, I think every group has a certain service that they give out that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Built-in does an amazing job for a lot of the companies here in LA and just other places, and getting the brand out there and having the community be aware of those particular companies. For us, I think like there's this sort of point of like, okay, is that sort of a place we could be now, or is that something we did before, or is it something we can do in the future? And also for us, it's a little tough because we hire in so many different locations. It's interestingly, right now we actually have more open roles outside of our headquarters than usual. And so, a group like Built in LA that can specialize in local region, might not make sense at this time, right?
But it's interesting because I think like if you could do it at your own location, you should just fully do that.
We do. We actually, I think like that's something that we're looking into again. I mean, we have a pretty awesome location here. So definitely we're always thinking about that. as well. So yeah, we'll probably be hosting some events here in the near future.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nihal, so much for being part of the Tech Recruit Podcast. You have yourself a wonderful day.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacey, and looking forward to seeing you again soon.